This is Sylvie Curry from Ramona, California, and I'm listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
Hey, good evening, and welcome to the Really Big Barbecue Central Show. This is the show that talks about all things important in the world of barbecue and grilling. Originating from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I am your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evenings live fire fun and frivolity show. If you want to get in contact with me tonight, if you want to follow the show off hours, here's how you do all of that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to Greg at BBQCentralShow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you can get the newsletter. Coming up in about 12 minutes from now, it's the second Tuesday of the month. And in that first interview spot, you know who's coming. The creator, the most heavily trafficked barbecue grilling forums and websites ever, Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. And then, after Meathead, another second Tuesday of the month regular guest in the first hour, the contributing barbecue editor to Southern Living magazine, and there's a new top 50 list out that we're going to be talking about, just released earlier today, Robert Moss from robertfmoss.com. And that will bring a wrap to the first hour, and then we'll move to the second hour, where we have a pair of first-timers coming out of the chute first, the creator of the Rocket Fire Torch, which can be found at rocketfiretorch.com, Michael Berard. And closing the show tonight, not to be outdone by one Michael, it is another Michael, but we're going to be talking about cellularly cultivated meat, as we say. A columnist for Canary Media, Michael Grunwald. I'm telling you, I'm always excited for Tuesday's show, but the first hour we know is going to be gold. The second hour is shaping up to be some of the best second hour content that we have had in recent memory, maybe even all of 2023, and that's quite a lot to say considering the amount of great guests and content that we have had over the course of this year, and we're only getting started here as we cross over what would be mid-September. So looking forward to all of that. Meathead, Robert Moss, first hour, and then Michael Berard, Rocket Fire Torch, and Michael Grunwald, columnist for the Canary Media. And that's how the show is laying out. Don't forget, you can follow me socially, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Snapchat at BBQ Central Show. And we say good evening to those of you watching tonight through one of the video streaming platform partners. You can go to Facebook and Twitch/BBQ Central Show to watch. Also, you can take in the show via YouTube, which is youtube.com/@BBQ Central Show. And of course, we do have a YouTube poll question of the week. Off the heels of my guest last week, and I'll leave it at there, I'm asking everybody on the face of the earth this evening, do you believe that there is any pellet grill out there on the market that could last 100 years? And currently, and I'm surprised that this is low, 82% of you are saying no. 18%, 18% of you are saying yes. You believe that there is some form of a pellet grill that can last 100 years? Wow. I'm interested to hear the makes and models of those that might be able to stretch the century mark. But that is the question tonight, so we'll ask all the guests who are going to be appearing here this evening on the lead, and then we will keep track as the show progresses. So let's start here this evening, and I have two different places that I would like to go, and stick with me here. First and foremost, from the Sam the Cooking Guy segment last week. Now, I didn't really see it like this, but many of you thought that Sam was actually, for lack of a better term, angling in a rather unique way to get a free Franklin offset barbecue pit. I highly doubt that this is the case. That would certainly be an alternative way of doing things. But assuming that worked, don't you think that that puts Sam's in an incredibly awkward spot where if the unit exceeds his wildest expectations, he would now have to talk about how much he likes it after spending a number of minutes talking about how high the price was on the show last week. There's more bad looks with this than good looks, so no, I don't agree with any of you that were writing into me saying, here's what we really think. He's angling. Now, the segment, as usual, gold. By the way, I'm going to give Sam a pass on that whole portion of the segment that was talking about pricing because, well, he's quite knowledgeable on a number of live fire items. And he does say this on my show fairly frequently. He's a fringe barbecue and grilling guy. And I can tell you that knowing the price of steel offset pits in today's market, not in his expert purview, to say the least. And I'll leave it at that. But I don't think we need to spend even one more second thinking that Sam's angling for a free barbecue pit. If he wants a barbecue pit, he can go buy one. And not an expert on what stuff costs, typically, especially in the offset market. Now, number two, maybe you don't want to hear about this, but it is news, and it's new news, and yes, it concerns Memphis in May. And the update is this: 3 days ago, on the 9th, the Memphis River Parks Partnership filed a lawsuit against Memphis in May International Festival because they have not paid the invoice that they were given for damages to Tom Lee Park post-music and barbecue festival. And according to the WREG report that I was reading, MRPP did extend some extra time for Memphis in May to pay this invoice, but evidently enough time has passed to take this next step into litigation. Now, the question on everybody's mind is this: can Memphis in May pay off? And while I have no idea what the financial situation is over there, I can't imagine that they have $550, $650, $750,000 laying around in the coffers to get right. I've been getting a lot of DMs and a lot of emails wanting to know what's next. I don't know. But the fact that the lawsuit is now filed has really made everything much more urgent in every way. I don't know if Memphis in May has gotten any word from their insurance company, because remember, they did file a claim, as they stated, to help either pay or offset the cost of this damage invoice that they got from Memphis River Parks Partnership. But I have no word on if that insurance company has given them any feedback, has denied the claim, has approved the claim in full. I don't know. So Memphis in May, as usual, as I'm writing emails to them, asking questions, would you like to come on the show? Would you like to give? They're not very keen on answering any or all of my emails. So the best I can tell you at this point is, A, there is a now lawsuit filed, which is unfortunate. B, I have no word from Memphis in May on what they're going to be doing, but typically that's their MO. Once they want to talk about it, they'll get back in touch with this WREG, which is probably the local newspaper out there in Memphis, and tell them what they want to do first. Then typically I'll get an answer back a couple days later. But we will track it. But there is a lawsuit. Somebody's going to have to be paying. And what happens if they don't pay? Certainly this is as bad as it can go at this point. I didn't think we would get to this stage of events, but we are here. We are effing here as it relates to the Memphis River Parks Partnership and the Memphis in May International Barbecue Festival. We will continue to track as it goes. Jill in Georgia writing in to the show. Greg, I have been into live fire cooking for the last 5 years. Just found your show a few months ago. If you're looking for input on potential guests being a woman, I would like to hear from more women. I think the show is very good so far. Regards, Jill. Jill, input taken and duly noted. Mike in New Jersey writing in, Greg, lab-grown meat will never be a thing here in the States, no matter how much the whiny environmentalists cry for it. For me, it's real meat or GTFO. And I think a lot of real red-blooded Americans feel the same way. Love the show. Podcast only. Regards, Mike. Well, okay. We got Meathead in the green room. He's ready to rock. Before we get to Meathead, let's learn a little bit about Pits and Spits. Are you tired of settling for mediocre grilling experiences? Yes, you are. It's time to step it up. Bring the ultimate flavor and the ultimate cooker to the backyard barbecues. Pits and Spits charcoal grills offering the highest quality live fire cooking experience you can get in the market today. Using either wood or charcoal, their solid fuel grills produce those classic flavors you're looking for when you have time to fire up the grill and cook for family and friends. With a large adjustable fuel tray, you can raise and lower the fire control and fine-tune the heat. This is their version of, let's say, a Santa Maria-style cooker. And by the way, if you've been on the website, you've looked at the charcoal grills, you know you can fit, pardon my French, an F-load of food on this. You can cook in many different ways. Again, you can raise that charcoal tray all the way up if you want to sear off 15 or 20 steaks at one time. Or if you want to lower that food tray, go a little bit more of the traditional low and slow. You can bank the fuel off to one side. You can put the meat on the opposite side, cook indirect or two-zone. It's very flexible, very nimble for a cooker. Check them out online, pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. That's pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central, and use promo code Charcoal Central for $150 off any charcoal grill as you're ordering. Again, that's Charcoal Central at checkout for $150 off any charcoal grill, and then the website pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. And the Pits and Spits is spelled with the double T on both. The double T on the Pits and the double T on the Spits. Meathead joins us next. Sit around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Broadcasting live from the BBQ Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
All right, welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by cookinpellets.com, your number one source for quality wood pellets for all your pellet-driven cookers. After you're done perusing the offerings at cookinpellets.com and you're ready to buy, go to walmart.com or lowes.com. Or Walmart, Lowe's. It's another big box store. What's bigger than Walmart, though? Great shipping rates there. A lot of the time, shipping's included. So, again, that's the great folks over at cookinpellets.com. Before we get to Meathead, I do want to show this. You would remember at some point last month, I actually forget what date it was, but the show crossed over the 3 million total downloads mark, and my parents sent me this very nice commemorative gift right here. You can see this is a microphone with a headset resting over it. It's metal. It's got LED lights on it, and at the bottom it says BBQ Central Show, 3 million downloads. So I did want to give them some thanks and recognition for recognizing the fact that the show has crossed that threshold at that 3 million. We kind of blew right over it, and we're already 50,000 new downloads into this whole thing. But thank you, Mom and Dad, and my sister Kate, for giving me that piece of recognition that's now right here in the studio. All right, joining me now, the creator of AmazingRibs.com, your friend and mine, it is Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. Meathead, where's that microphone at? I don't see it anywhere near you, and that makes me very scared.
Yeah, well, it's blocking my logo, you see.
Right,
You gotta...
No, it's not. Oh, I see
Hello,
on your shirt.
Centralites.
Yes, like nobody knows who
Centralites.
Meathead is. You're from AmazingRibs.com, the founder, of course. And we are always excited to talk to Meathead on the second Tuesday. We have a YouTube.
Congratulations on 3 million.
Yeah, thank you. We're on our way to 4 million, as it were.
We average 2 million page views a month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. How many downloads do you get a month?
Oh, nobody downloads a website.
We have a YouTube poll question of the week, Meathead. We're asking everybody this, and I need your input. Ferociously, I need it. Do you believe that any pellet grill could last 100 years? Yes or no?
Well, theoretically, I mean, let's count backwards 100 years to 1923. There are cars and airplanes still flying from that era, but they're really, they're constantly being replaced. Parts are being replaced and repaired. I mean, I've had numerous pellet smokers, and they got a lot of moving parts, and they got a heating element, and things burn out and break. I know this. Weber, for example, maintains a huge parts inventory. If you've got a 20-year-old Weber Genesis and you need a part, they probably still have it. Now, let's keep in mind the Weber kettle was first introduced in 48 or 49. So, we're going back quite a ways. My gut instinct is it might last 100 years, but it's going to need parts. It's going to need repairs. And will the manufacturers still be in existence? Will Traeger still be there in 100 years? Will we be interested in cooking on pellets? Will there be another, pellets really are just the past 10 years in popularity. Will something surpass it? I don't know. Maybe they'll last. Probably they'll need a lot of parts.
Meathead, we've said a lot, but it's a yes or no question. Do you think it lasts 100 years?
No. Without repairs, no.
Currently, 86% of Centralites voting on the YouTube poll question of the week are also with you, saying that no, they don't believe that any type of pellet cooker will last 100 years. And we'll track the further progress, and we'll ask our other guests here this evening. I'll be interested to hear what Robert Moss has
come back
to
in
say.
100 years and see, I mean, I'll plan to be here.
Of course. You'll be 170. A month ago, we were talking about how excited we were to once again meet up in person. You were doubly excited to break my I've never been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame streak, as it's only 10 minutes away from my house. And then we were going to go to the local restaurant, Larder Delicatessen, where we would eat like kings, and you would be able to have some conversation with the person who's widely considered to be one of the foremost koji experts in all the globe, not only nationally, but globally.
Yeah, man that I highly respect. I was really, oh, dear.
So what?
You want
what
me to
happened?
tell the story?
Can you take it from here, please?
Yeah, I'll take it from here. Greg and I planned this whole day. I was going to fly into Cleveland early. We were going to go to the Hall of Fame. Then we were going to go to Jerry Ermansky's larder.
Yes.
And we were going to taste a lot of stuff that had been treated with koji and talk to Jeremy and learn more about koji, because I've been writing about it and fiddling with it. And we're going to have a great meal. And then I was going to drive out to Milan, Ohio, which is about an hour and a half west of Cleveland, where there's a big vegetable farm. I was participating in cooking for, catch this, I'm cooking for a culinary vegetable institute. But I was cooking steak. They had to have some sort of beef.
Yes.
In any case, So I'm going through security at O'Hare, and I'm just carrying a small duffel bag, and I have with me a bottle of my red meat rub, just the size bottle, about the size of a beer can,
Yep.
and it's in my duffel bag. And they scan, you know how they scan stuff. They scan my bag, and they pull me aside, and they open the bag, and they take this out. And I sent you a picture? You got it handy? Can you show it? There it is. They put it on the table, and they pull out 4 little squeeze bottles and a whole bunch of reagents and tests, and they start swabbing it and testing it, and it comes up positive for explosives.
Hence, highly
there's not
explosive
even
barbecue
hot
rub.
pepper in the goddamn thing. It tests positive for explosives.
Wow.
Next thing I know, the bomb squad is there. I'm standing there. They got the bomb squad circling around me. They're testing my rub. They open it, and I just take the goddamn stuff. Nope. They're not going to let me
Of course
get
not.
away.
Oh.
And so now they broke the seal. It was a fresh bottle that had never been opened. They broke the seal. They're sniffing it. They're testing it. They're swabbing it. Finally, after about 30 minutes, they decide it is, in fact. And I got my AmazingRibs.com barbecue shirt on. I hold it up, and there's my picture on the label next to my face. See, that's me. That's me. And I missed my friggin' flight.
Yeah.
So our trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we got the kibosh. I didn't get in time, but we still had a fantastic visit with Jeremy Amansky at Larder. If you're in the Cleveland area, and God knows why you'd go there, if you're in the Cleveland area, that place is a special trip. He is really a fascinating, talented chef, and he's really deep into koji, which is a mold essentially full of enzymes that really interestingly alters flavors and enhances flavors. And I'm writing about it for my new book, and also for the website. We'll have some stuff on the website about it soon. So just go to AmazingRibs.com and type in KOJI, and you'll see what I've written about it. Fascinating stuff. We had a great time. It was just a lot of fun to hang with Greg again. We've done this maybe a half a dozen times.
Yeah, a lot.
We ate well. Boy, has he got some fascinating food.
I mean, he was just bringing out food after food after food. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, he was determined to let us taste everything in the restaurant. And what a nice guy too. I mean, he just sat down with us, and he can talk. He can talk more than I can.
Oh yeah,
he's good.
Yeah, he's good. What I like best about Jeremy is he's somebody, for me, as I told Sam the cooking guy last week, I'm not necessarily an overly adventurous eater. I'm not going to not try stuff, but I wouldn't classify myself as being like a risky eater by any stretch of the imagination. But when I'm in his facility, I always feel inspired to get outside of my comfort zone. When he handed me, a couple months ago, he handed me a spoonful of duck heart and duck testicle paste that had been made with koji. Like, of course, in my mind, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to eat this, but he's got it right in front of me. Am I going to say no and offend him? So, of course, and then it's delicious. It's salty. There's all kinds of magic going on. And what he really, so aside from the cooking chops, unquestioned, but he really excels at educating, explaining, here's the process. This is why we're doing it. This is why we can use the whole side of beef. This is why we can use the whole lemon or the whole lime instead of just taking the sweet or juicing it. There's no waste. Real big on not wasting stuff, how koji helps with all of that. So when I bring my kids in, we get to eat great. They love the food, but they're also getting this great culinary lesson from somebody who was a leader in the field. They think I'm a big shot because they know him, but they're getting educated. There. Yes, of course.
Because I remember one of your daughters came to Chicago with you one time.
Yeah, Maddie. Yep.
She was a volleyball star and competing in a volleyball competition. And we went to Chinatown together. And she had a ball. She loved the food.
Oh, yeah.
But I got the impression that she's not, by nature, a very adventurous eater. And she doesn't The idea that she went to a Korean barbecue restaurant was just way outside of her normal performance. So getting her into a deli, and it's a Jewish deli, only he veers from the traditional Katz's and Carnegie
Yeah.
style because of his use of koji. And we've talked about koji before, and that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. But 30 seconds for anybody who doesn't know what the hell we're talking about. Koji is a mold that's grown on rice usually, and you inoculate it with some water, and once it takes off, it creates a whole bunch of enzymes. And if you sprinkle it or pour it or marinate meat or vegetables with it, the enzymes alter the flavor, just like pineapple has enzymes in it, and so does kiwi and other things, and it alters the flavor. And I did a really fun experiment when I came back. I marinated chicken thigh. I took 3 chicken thighs. One I just salt and peppered. The other I did with MSG, and the other with koji. And all 3 were vastly different. I preferred the koji. My wife preferred the MSG. The plain one was just fine, but the other 2 really amped up the flavors. And koji is an aspergillus that they use to make sake with and to make soy sauce and miso. They're all made with koji, so it's not too weird. It was a lot of fun and a lot of educational, and I'll have some good info about it on the website and in my new book.
Meathead, maybe a couple months ago, I had briefly touched on the topic, maybe it was even off air, about cellularly cultivated meat. You turned me on to a lady who you thought was kind of a leading expert, somebody that could talk about it. She declined and then gave me a lead to this Michael Grunwald, who's going to be closing the show tonight, and he's a writer for Canary Media, Politico, multi-award winner, Harvard graduate, so I don't know why he's going to be on this show, but I've tricked him enough, and we're going to be talking about it tonight. Do you have any
I'm aware.
rudimentary thoughts on this new meat craze of cell-cultivated beef?
Well, first of all, I introduce you to Tamar Haspel. Tamar writes this marvelous award-winning column in the Washington Post. It appears only in the Washington Post and on AmazingRibs.com. She writes, well, we get reprint rights on our site. She's brilliant. She really is knowledgeable about the science of food and cooking, and also about health and diet. And so I knew that you were interested in exploring this, and I know she's written about it. I introduced you to her, and she felt, although she knows a lot about it, she would introduce you to somebody who knew more about it. Now, I have some general opinions, but I don't know a lot about it. I was interested to hear the comment you read from your listener about no way in hell am I ever going to eat it.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's going to take a while because it's really expensive to make the stuff now. And I've done this. If you go to Burger King and buy the Impossible Whopper and a regular Whopper, take them home, take the patty out from the center, rinse it in the sink, and taste the 2 side by side. I've heard people say it tastes just like a Whopper. It doesn't taste anything like a Whopper.
Oh.
When you do ketchup and mayonnaise and mustard and shredded lettuce and pickles and sesame bun, yeah, you can mistake the 2. But it's a vast improvement over the soybean patties that I ate, 10 years ago. And there are reasons why it makes sense. It is much easier on the environment. There are overheads. It's very expensive to build and produce this faux meat. I think that we will be eating it, but not a lot of it. I think that it's like there's food out there that we love to eat today. Well, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking.
All right.
20 years ago, nobody ever saw a red bell pepper. It was all green bell peppers. Now there's red and orange and yellow. Our food supply is edamame, as soybean pods. They're a lot of fun. Nobody ever ate a soybean pod 5 years ago. So our diet and what we eat is constantly changing, and this will find a niche in it For some people, it'll become very important. For other people, they won't come near it, and that's just the way it works. I look forward to them improving the flavor.
To me, the difference here. So, a lot of people have had the opportunity to try an Impossible or a Beyond. That's plant based. It's not meat. But what we're talking about tonight is technically meat. It's finding a cow or a chicken or fish or whatever, extracting cells, and then I don't know how the hell it's happening scientifically, but I mean, in all argument's sake, like that's real fish or chicken or meat.
That's a whole nother story. You can actually do that. You can, take a human being and pluck stem cells from it. How many of us remember back under the George Bush administration when we had a woman from Alaska saying, this was ridiculous and we can't have it. But you can take stem cells from an animal or other cells and grow them, and they're doing this now. Israel is Korea. There's several plants that are doing this nicely. And again, it's going to be very expensive. It will be real meat. It won't be faux meat like Impossible or the others. It's real meat. Again, it's going to be very expensive to produce, at least at the outset. But with time, the cost will come down. I mean, I remember the first iPhone. I bought the first iPhone. Apple introduced a new one today.
Yeah.
The price. I mean, everybody has a computer in their pocket. They'll come down, and it should, in theory, taste the same as real chicken and real beef, because it is real chicken and real beef. Just going to take a long time, and I shouldn't, expound any further because you have the real expert coming on later.
When is the refire of the Flat Top King going on your fireside chat?
Oh, I do a live broadcast once a month on the final Thursday of every month, simulcast on Facebook and YouTube. We're going to move it to Wednesday so we don't compete with Thursday Night Football.
Oh, good idea.
Next month, the last Wednesday of the month, we have Neil coming on. He's the Flat Top King. This is a guy who used to be a Navy chef working on a stainless steel flat top for a living. I mean, he did it every day. And he's talked to me about how, their procedures for cleanliness. Oh, my goodness. And I've talked to him at length because I'm doing a lot of fiddling with griddling now.
Yeah,
I've always griddled. I've always had a Lodge cast iron griddle that I've used, and I use it primarily for salmon and other things. But now, I've expanded my horizons, and you can do a lot of stuff on a griddle. And I'm not talking out of turn to your audience, because I bet a lot of your audience knows about these griddles.
Oh, for sure.
The griddle grills, if you want to call them. They're freestanding. They have 2, 3, 4 burners and a big old steel flat top, or stainless steel, or cold rolled steel, or cast iron. And it's the same thing that they cook on at Moe's Diner and Grill. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. You can do, and if you get good at it, if you juggling, you can do the meats on one side and the eggs on another side and the rice in the middle, and chop and toss and turn and chop, toss. And, guys who are good at this cook up a storm. I'm learning how to do this. My biggest issue with it is, and this is something I'm going to be writing more about, is the cleanup. These things are just a friggin' pain to get clean. When I'm done cooking on a stovetop, I toss the pan in the sink and scrub it, and I'm done. This is just like a giant frying pan, and it gets dirty. And if you're using cast iron or steel, they're really hard to clean. And if you've cooked fish in there, the fish oils get into the seasoning on the surface. So cleaning is an issue, and I expect that we'll talk a lot about this on the last Wednesday of this month.
Well, I'll be looking forward to that, so tune in. Otherwise, you go to AmazingRibs.com, and you see him here on the second Tuesday of every month. Meathead, always appreciate the time, but we'll see you in October.
Always fun to talk to you, Greg. And Congratulations on the Browns.
Yes. Thank you. Hopefully the Chicago Bears will find their winning ways with Justin Fields. We'll see. Thought he was going to be the answer, and now he's a question mark. So we will move on from there. The Browns 1-0 for those that are counting. Yes. Robert Moss is getting ready to join us here in just one moment. And before we get to him, we'll talk to you about Primo Cookers. Just this past weekend, Primo had their Primo Bash in Poplar Bluff, Illinois. If you know where the middle of nowhere is, then that's where Poplar Bluff is. And the Primo Factory out there in Illinois. I was following it on social media. I had plans to be out there, but it was kind of a challenging weekend for me, so couldn't do it. But here's what I know. There's a lot more social media talent there than there was last year at the flagship event. There's a lot more people going in general in attendance. There's now a cooking competition. There's tours through the factory. I don't know if you can get tours if you just show up every day of the week. You can get a tour or not. I'll have to check with Nick on that. But there's no doubt about it. Next year, assuming it's all right on my schedule, I'm going. There's no reason not to go. I would suggest that you go as well. Put it on a calendar. This is about the time it happens every year in September. And it's growing. This could be some type of a sanctioned barbecue event with the amount of people that were there. And then big-time social media stars were there. Scott Thomas from Grillin' Fools. Other folks that I can't remember right off the top of my head, but they have very large social media accounts. So if you place importance on that, which a lot of people do, then probably have the chance to meet them and talk. But the bottom line is you're going to the factory, you're seeing how these are made. There's a really cool kiln demonstration that is online, and you can view that for yourself. Then I'm sure there's deals where if you want to bring a truck, these things are heavy. Don't try and lift an extra large up by yourself like me and then hurt your arm. You have to go to a physical therapist. You can find one at a dealer near you. Go to primogrill.com and then search for the closest dealer to you and then check out all the sizes of ovals. I recommend the extra large. That seems to be a great QPR or quality price ratio. And I'm using it all the time. Oh my God, it's so great. The ceramics are great. It really provides a much more humid cooking environment than you would ever believe if you've never cooked on one before. Go to primogrill.com, find the dealer near you, grab one today, bring help. Don't grab it by yourself, as I had mentioned. And then get all the accessories, too, because they've really caught up in that regard as well. It's a great cook. Primogrill.com, longtime sponsor of the show. Happy to have them aboard. And we'll be back with Robert Moss right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the BBQ Central Show.
And we thank Meathead for joining us the last segment, and this portion being brought to you by Fireboard. If you're looking for a remote thermometering system that can accommodate 6 inputs, you can rotate between internal meat probes and smoker pit temps if you would like. Doesn't matter. You can track it on your computer, track it on your phone. Fireboard is the place to go. And then, of course, they have that instant read meat thermometer and one-channel Fireboard combo called the Spark. You got to check that out for $150 or less. Can't beat it. Great thermometer. I just used it tonight on some chicken. So check out fireboard.com. My next guest tonight is the other first Tuesday of the month in the first hour guest. Always 35 past, the contributing barbecue editor to Southern Living magazine. Robert Moss, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about here, Robert. So before we get to
sure
that,
do, Greg.
No doubt. Before we get to that, we have a YouTube poll question of the week that I'm getting everybody's thoughts on, which is this: do you believe any pellet cooker can last 100 years? Yes or no?
No.
Well, I appreciate your directness and not pussyfooting around it like our pal Meathead did a couple minutes ago.
I mean, I'm with him conceivably in a museum or something, but no, I don't think you're going to be. I don't think anybody's grandkids are going to be using their pellet cooker 100 years from now.
75% of the YouTube voting public are in agreement there as well, saying no, they don't believe that a pellet cooker can go 100 years. And I'm on that line of thinking as well. Let's go ahead and jump into it here. Here's a different question before we talk about the top 50 list. Would you pay $60 a year to have access to some of the biggest barbecuers on social media? Yes or no?
I feel like I don't know enough to answer that question. What do you mean by access to the biggest social media influencers?
So you have who
get?
Look, I don't know who you consider to be the biggest social, but when I'm reading about that, these are big names that you would see on YouTube.
Yep.
They have huge followings on Instagram. They appear to be very accomplished barbecue cooks in their own right. Some of them highly mechanically trained, building stuff. So all these people have been assembled, and they've launched their own streaming platform called Ember TV. I'll talk about that in the second hour a little bit. And they're charging $60 to have access to all the content. So knowing that, are you spending $60 a year?
Oh, when you say access, just to be able to see all the content.
Yes. Yeah, you got to pay to play.
Highly unlikely.
We call that no, where I come from. Robert Moss is joining
I need
us
to know
here.
more what the content is about, but there's so much.
Well, I mean, I would imagine.
I'm not sitting here thinking I have no way to get access to good barbecue and live fire content today for free. So I'm not sure what the $60 gets me.
I'm assuming, and I've reached out to some of the bigger names that are supposed to be a part of this. I don't know where the ownership stuff lies or responsibility, but some of the folks I've had on the show previously and would like to have them on to talk about some of the questions like you're asking. But I would imagine this is all how to cook this, or this is my method. You know, this is Robert's method on cooking a brisket, and then I'm part of the thing. This is Greg's method on cooking a brisket. This is how you run a fire in an offset pit, or this is how you run a lot of stuff like this. As you said, easily you could say you go on YouTube and find the 70 or 100,000 other free options, but then you have to weigh who are you watching in relation to this team that has assembled Embers TV and where their expertise lies. So we'll leave it there for now. Contributing barbecue editor to Southern Living magazine. Last month, we were like, well, right about this time next month, which is now, you could be seeing the top or the new top 50 barbecue joints for Southern Living magazine. It was released a little bit earlier today as people were feverishly sending me the link. Did you see this? In case you didn't know. I'm like, I know the guy, right?
I may have totally previewed the last segment.
That's right. I mean, come on. Before we get into the Southern Living Top 50, I get an email from a listener a month or so ago, and it involved potted meat. And this was a semi-recurring topic on the show for the last number of months. Do you have a history or a track on said potted meat by chance?
Yeah, I do. I was actually worried that potted meat was going away for a while. It seemed to have faded out, but I'm glad
you were worried?
Yeah, I was glad it's come back around. I thought people had forgotten about it because we would talk. We had sort of had to bounce around as an idea to talk about for a while. But yeah, I do actually have a potted history of potted meat, if you will. What we know is potted meat, at least what you experienced sitting on that airplane to your great delight, is sort of the 20th century incarnation of potted meat. But it actually it started off as a very different type of thing. It's sort of the English version of pate or confit or something like that, which is it's a meat preservation technique dating back to before refrigeration. So you cooked a big roast or some kind of meat and you have a bunch left over. You don't have a refrigerator because it's the 19th century. How do you preserve it? Well, what you would do is you would chop up all that meat very fine into little bits. You would mix it with a bunch of spices, pour over it some kind of fat like butter or lard or something like that, and then actually bake it in a pot. So like in a stoneware pot, hence the meat is potted. And then at the end, pour melted butter or lard over the top, which if you know, is sort of still a technique used for charcuterie of various types. And then you could set it away in a cool area, meaning somewhere in the shadows, but not in the refrigerator. And your meat would stay good for days or even weeks because that layer of fat and all the spices and everything would preserve it. So that was sort of the 19th century version of potted meat. Around this, and I looked into this after I heard it on your show because I was like, okay, well, how do we get from that? Because I sort of knew about that to the can of meat that's sitting on the plane and they the guy probably paid 79 cents for.
Yeah, right.
With hopefully got some free saltines with it. Well, that happened around the turn of the 20th century. So around 1900 or so, as the meat packing industry was developing, particularly in Chicago, they took this thing, potted meat, and made an industrial version of it, which was to take all the leftover scraps of meat. So not like leftover in the sense that we had a roast we ate last night, we're going to dice it up, but all the pieces that you would carve off that you may not want to eat, and dice it up real fine and mix it in, and then you put it in a can, and then you would actually cook it in the can, steam it in the can, and then sell it as potted meat. And so probably this is literally using up every last scrap, getting every last scrap of profit out of your packing house. I found a report from the sanitary inspector of the city of Chicago, who in 1906 was investigating all these cases of food poisoning. And what happened was people would go buy canned potted meat, take it home, open the can, eat a little bit of it, and just leave it sit down on the counter, which is how you would do your preserved potted meat. But this other potted meat wasn't preserved in any way. It had just been sort of like cooked in a can. And it went bad, and people were getting sick left and right, and they have been ever since. So that's basically the history of potted meat in a nutshell.
And from a olfactory emanation, it stinks. It's terrible. Just
and
terrible.
If you look at the ingredients of potted meat, it's it's pork parts and chicken parts and things you just don't even want to know what goes in that can.
Today, the list is out, and you can go to southernliving.com/BBQ Restaurants, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But if you go to, or probably Robert Moss' website, there's probably a link there as well.
Yeah, go to robertfmoss.com, and the link is right there at the top of the page.
We could go through all 50, but we certainly don't have the time. Let's talk generally to me about 50 to 11, and then we'll reveal the top 10 for those that haven't looked yet.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of the list. We took a big break over COVID. And so 2022 was the list coming back after, I think, 3 years. And, it just in terms of who's in the top 50 and who's not, that didn't change a whole lot. A few people fell out, a few people moved in, but not that many different. And more, it's just people shuffled around. I think, though, this year, two things happened. One is I really went back and over the past year, really wanted to visit the very top of the list and make sure that I revisited everyone who's in sort of the top 10, tried to get all the top 20, make sure I revisited them again. And just to see how things were shaking out. And then I really just, the more as I thought about the list itself and just as context, this particular list is chosen 100% by me. With no real input. I mean, I take input from lots of people on where I should go visit, but I don't. It's not a team effort, in terms of compiling the list. This is the editor's list, so it's very personal. It very much reflects my own, tastes and preferences. But this time around, I really focused on regionality. As I think I said in the introduction, I really tried to tighten the screws down a lot more on regionality. And if you look at the top 50, like who deserves to make it. The problem is there's so many good restaurants out there, and the bubble, as I would call it, to make the 50 is huge. And there are lots of restaurants that just keep ticking over. And ultimately, I had to figure out, okay, so what sort of gets you over? Ultimately, I'm saying if you can only visit 50 restaurants, I try to give a representative sample. If you've eaten all 50 of these, you sampled all the different styles. You've eaten at places that are very influential, historically speaking, that really represent what's going on in their region or what's going on sort of like with the sort of modern trends and things like that. So it's not just that it's a good restaurant. Everybody to make the list has to be a good restaurant. The food has to be good. There has to be something about the experience that's unique and it's different and it sort of, has influence or stands out some way. So I think that shifted a lot and took some people off and put some restaurants on that weren't on there before, just in that sort of 11 to 50. But again, particularly once, making that 50, it could easily be a top 100 list. There's so many great candidates. It's not like I had trouble, making the 50, figuring out who made the 50 or I didn't have to struggle to get 50.
Yeah.
It's like struggling to who to leave off was the hardest question of that.
So let's take it from 10 and work our way down to number one. Coming in 10th spot is B.E. Scott's Barbecue, not to be confused with either Rodney Scott's Barbecue or Scott's Barbecue. So what makes B.E.'s unique?
Yeah, it gets confusing because you also will hear it called Scott Parker's Barbecue or Parker's Barbecue. B.E. Scott founded it, I think, in the 1960s in Lexington, Tennessee. There are lots of Lexingtons in the barbecue world. Small town, sort of in the middle of Tennessee, about 45 minutes off of I-40 if you're heading to Tennessee. Run today by Zach Parker, who is the son of Early Parker. And B.E. Scott originally founded it. So Zach is is the third generation of the restaurant today. They are a practitioner of the West Tennessee whole hog style, which was huge about 30, 40 years ago. Only a handful of whole hog joints left in West Tennessee, and they're doing it the old way. So it's just it represents this style. B, it's just a fantastic place off the side of the road, low key, quite an operation, and the barbecue is fantastic. Wonderful West Tennessee style whole hog.
Would accompanying West Tennessee representatives also be somebody like a Pat Martin's or a Peg Leg, or no?
Both, yes.
Yeah,
So
okay.
Pat Martin will tell you he is very much. I mean, that's sort of that's the region he was inspired by, and he is following the West Tennessee style, as is Peg Leg. Peg Leg is a little bit more of a mix of Memphis and West Tennessee, which isn't exactly the same thing, but both of them cook whole hogs, and those are the restaurants they sort of went to growing up that they are sort of keeping following the tradition of.
Number 9 is the current number 1 on Texas Monthly's list, which is Goldie's Barbecue. Why number 9 and not higher?
I can't. I mean, if you ask me if I had to rank them tomorrow, it probably these would switch up, right? They're so close; it's so hard to say. I can tell you, I can't tell you why 9 and not 8, but I can tell you why it's in the top 10. It is a relatively new place. It was literally founded, probably a month before COVID. I think February 2022, by 5 really young pitmasters, all of whom had cooked in various great Texas restaurants, and then decided to open a barbecue joint of their own. And of course, then COVID hit and they sort of limped through. And then Texas Monthly put them in the number 1, and they sort of blew up and have been going strong ever since. For me, I just am super impressed by every single thing on the menu is excellent, top notch. Just from the brisket to ribs to sausage, but also they make their own bread. So, but not fancy bread. It's white loaves, just like classic Texas, sort of Texas white bread, pickles, everything. So it's just flawless, I would say. So it's superlative barbecue, and again, I can't say why it's 9 versus 10 versus 8, but it is certainly top 10 barbecue.
8 is Lewis Barbecue.
Yeah, Lewis is of an unusual one because I not unusual, but it's sort of the exception that proves the rule when I'm talking about regionality. So Lewis Barbecue is Texas style barbecue in the heart of Charleston, South Carolina. Here I am. Normally I'd be like, well, you should be cooking pig, and here in Charleston. The difference is that John Lewis, just everything he makes is sort of like Goldie's. I mean, everything is really, really excellent. He has a large scale operation. As good of sausage and brisket, as good of Texas style barbecue as you'll find anywhere in Texas. In fact, he cooked at Aaron Franklin's and then was a pitmaster at La Barbecue in Austin before he came to Charleston. So certainly a strong pedigree. What I like about it, and maybe what kicks it up into that upper echelon, he brought all the best things of Texas barbecue and left the bad things behind. I went there on a Friday. I think I walked in at 11:55 in the morning. I waited in line for, I think, about 12 minutes and was at the front of the line getting my barbecue and sitting down and eating it. Nice. Unlike the 3 to 4 hours you would spend you show up at noon at a Texas barbecue joint on a Friday, good luck. So he's got this system down. You can go eat there at 9 o'clock at night and they're still carving fresh barbecue. So it's everything that makes Texas barbecue great and then better.
7 is Lexington Barbecue, which, of course, if you know anything about that, it's a Wayne Monk establishment.
Yes. I mean, you got to sort of hit all the styles, and the Piedmont, North Carolina style is one of the just classic, American barbecue styles. For me, Lexington barbecue is probably the quintessential representative. I think Stamey's in Greensboro is a few spots down the list. I think they're very close. But if you want to sample that style, you go to Honey Monks, as they still call it. In fact, the name is Lexington Barbecue, but it was originally called Honey Monks when it first opened in the 60s. Longtime customers still write checks to Honey Monks, and they still cash them, apparently. Local checks only, please. But it's just a fantastic, classic Piedmont style chopped pork. So that tomato vinegar sauce, red slaw, hush puppies. It's just it's a classic.
6 is also a longtime classic, Skylight Inn.
Yeah, go to the other side of North Carolina, to the eastern North Carolina, to Ayden, and again, it's just there's no place quite like it. First you pull up, and it's like this hexagonal building, maybe it's octagonal, drive-in that dates back to the 1950s. Somewhere in the 80s, the Jones family erected a dome on top, like the Capitol Dome, because I think it was National Geographic magazine called them the world's barbecue capital. So they put a capital on top of it. And they still, if you go around the back, you'll see this gigantic mound of wood, probably, hundreds of square feet of wood. I don't know how many cords it would be. They're still cooking the old school way, whole hogs on open pits. They bring them, they chop them. The classic sort of iconic Skylight Inn dish is like a little paper tray, red and white check paper tray with chopped barbecue in it, coleslaw, and a square of the family's homemade cornbread, which is very minimalist cornbread. Very, very simple, but the flavor of the barbecue, you just can't beat that wood cooked flavor. And unlike most places, people are starting to do this more and more in sort of imitation or homage to Skylight Inn, but they actually take the skin from the pig and they chop it in with cleavers into the meat, so you get these little almost crisp little smoky bits mixed in there. So it's really
I thought that was a point of contention between Sam Jones and his dad. They didn't want to do that at Skylight, so when Sam opened his, that was like the first thing he did was mix in the crispy skin into his barbecue.
No, they've already mixed the skin in. I think the big point of contention between Skylight Inn and Sam Jones Barbecue, which is on the list as well, somewhere down in the, not too far down, somewhere in the 20s, I think. Sam Jones, which is about a 10-minute drive from Skylight Inn. It's in a little town called Winterville. Yep. It was over serving beer. And that was sort of the Skylight Inn, no beer at all. Sam Jones, a much more large format restaurant, and they do other things. But no, I think chopping them, unless I'm mistaken, well, they definitely chop it in at Skylight Inn. I think that's always been the way their family has done that. The serving of the beer was the thing that almost, I think, drove the family apart. But they've since reconciled, I understand.
Let's jump to number 3 for the sake of time. Dreamland Barbecue. I have to say, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that it's this high because I've heard reviews from all sorts of people, and most of them are not glowing. So what makes number 3 Dreamland Barbecue? All
right. Well, number 1, it's Dreamland in Tuscaloosa, the original Dreamland Barbecue. Dreamland's now a chain. They're all over Alabama. I think a few in Georgia, perhaps, maybe some down in Florida, but there's about a dozen of them. And nothing against the other ones. I'm not going to run them down, but the Dreamland in Tuscaloosa is special, and that's the one that made the list. It was on my list last year, but it really rocketed up this year. I went back down there this summer, and I don't know. I mean, it's something about walking in the place and sort of the atmosphere itself. It's this low red building. It's been there forever. It's dark. It's such a classic University of Alabama football shrine. There's stuff all over the wall. So to begin with, you got the great atmosphere, and then the food comes out. And when you first sit down, they bring out like white bread and like a little thing of sauce that's warm in a little cup, and then whatever you order, out comes the ribs, out come the sausage. And it's a really simple menu. If you go to the other Dreamlands, they have a bunch of other stuff on the menus, but there it's pretty much ribs and sausage, and I think they have pork as well. But and it's just fantastic. It's a unique style of rib. I think of it as Alabama style ribs. They're cooked on these big brick pits, but unlike offset ribs cooked in Texas, which are great, but it's just a different category of food. The Alabama rib is cooked hot and fast on this big brick pit about 2 feet above a roaring fire, and they actually have a hose that they will use to squirt the fire. So you got flame coming up. We're not talking about offset, and they cook them in, I don't even know how long. It's very quick, an hour or so to cook the ribs. But they're tender but chewy. They have a great texture to them. And I don't know, this time around, did something about going to Dreamland just really struck me. And this was back to back on a long trip. I ate a lot of places. Like, this is really special, and it's really delicious. And I keep thinking about if I had to go, to this place or that place, this place or that place. It kept bubbling up until it landed at number 3.
Number 2 is Fresh Air Barbecue. I'm not familiar with Fresh Air.
Yeah, Fresh Air, again, moved up the ranks. I think it's been in my top 10, a longtime favorite, but I hadn't been there since before the pandemic. And another, that type of thing where you pull up the side of the road. Fresh Air it's found in 1920. It hasn't changed much. If you talk about, people will say, what's Georgia-style barbecue? I always say, well, go to Fresh Air. That's Georgia-style barbecue. There's differences here and there, but, there's no chicken on the menu. There's no brisket on the menu. There is barbecue on the menu, which means pork, and it's chopped pork. It's cooked on this L-shaped open brick pit. When you first walk into the restaurant, and you walk into this little porch that has sawdust or wood shavings lined it. And in the old days, apparently, the wood shavings were inside the restaurant until the health department started frowning on that. But you still walk across that to get in. You open the door, and as soon as you walk in, it's just hickory smoke or hardwood smoke. And there's a giant L-shaped brick pit right behind the counter where they're cooking everything. Wow. It's got the best Brunswick stew I've ever had, which is a Georgia classic. And so every single thing about it is exactly what you would want a rest of the bee. And for me, it's the iconic representation of Georgia barbecue. It'd been a while since I've been, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So it landed at number 2.
Number 1 has been number 1 at various points through the Texas Monthly list, and that is Snow's Barbecue. Why number 1?
Yeah, first time it has made it to the number 1 slot on my list. And I had to admit, the previous number 1, which we didn't talk about, was Scott's Barbecue. They landed at number 5.
Number 5, right?
Scott's in Hemingway. There's a lot of Scott's on there, but the original Scott's Barbecue in Hemingway, still a fantastic restaurant. It sort of hurt me to have to put a Texas spot in the top list as a South Carolinian. However, I have to say that, I went to Snow's again. And it hurt me for a lot of reasons to put it at the top, because they open at 8 a.m., which is insane. That's when the doors open. What other barbecue opens at 8 a.m.? So, and the people, now that Tootsie was on the whole Netflix show, I mean, she's an international barbecue celebrity. While I was standing in line next to people from Minnesota, a whole crowd of them who were sort of on this barbecue pilgrimage. They had flown to Texas and were eating it. And then I ran into these guys from Mexico. It was a bunch of competitive barbecue cooks from Mexico, who had come to eat at Snow's as well. So, I mean, that's quite a meeting, and people from just all over. But the line's insane. I got there, it was still dark. Got in the back of the line and waited 4 hours to eat. So normally this would be a bad thing in my book. But what Snow's has done in the recent incarnation, used to be you would wait. They have a little building where you go, order your barbecue and they cut, and the line would just sort of build out. And they had like a porta-john, for the people who were waiting in line for a long time. And you sort of waiting like sort of grassy gravel lot. They built a little house to be a bathroom, to have bathrooms for people waiting in line. They added like a free bar where you can get free beer and free Bloody Marys, which really helps take the edge off. It's a gift shop there. But then the line now wraps around the back of the cooking shed. So while you're waiting, you can sit there and see all the action going on, see Tootsie cooking, see Clay Cowgill, who's the main pit guy now, working all the big pits and see everything. And it's almost it's such a fun atmosphere. And then finally, you get up there and the barbecue's fantastic. So I had, since I really, this time around, I was saying the food's super important, but the experiences is too. And the two of those really came together for me at Snow's, and they're number 1.
If you want to see the whole list, you can go over to robertfmoss.com, and right at the top of the website, you're going to be linking over to Southern Living Magazine. You can review the list, and then feel free to email Robert all of your, you missed this one should be higher than this one should be dropping lower than that one. I'm sure he's happy to take them, or maybe he's going to be taking a vacation from all social media and emails over the next couple of weeks.
I'm currently in hiding in a secluded location with no social media. I will say, though, I've visited every single place on the list multiple times. It very much reflects my preferences and personality. We can argue till about places and who made lists, who should have, but I think you have to agree that if you look at all 50 of them, it's a pretty damn good list of places to go eat.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And 50 places I would certainly like to go across the South. And we're talking with Robert Moss here. Robert, always appreciate the time, and we'll see you in October.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
You got it. So if you agree with that list or disagree with that list, you can't argue with the fact that Robert continually puts himself out there and says, look, I'm the one putting the list together. I'm the one that visits the restaurants. Here it is, like it or not. And that's what I like. It's not popularity contests or any nonsense like that a lot of people like to do these days. Or going on TripAdvisor and devising a list like that. None of that. He's doing it, and he's putting it out there, offering it out there, all on his own, going out on that wire. All right, we're going to step away real quick and come back, wrap the first hour. We're already late, and then we'll get back and caught up for our second hour interviews. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the BBQ Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
We thank Robert Moss for joining us last segment. RobertFMoss.com, his website, in case you want to go over and check out that top 50 list that we were talking about just a few moments ago. See what you agree with or disagree with. And remember, this encompasses the South. Now, somewhere Maryland also is allowed to be in the South. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Remember, Kentucky is also being included in the South somehow. So whatever the South is to Southern living, that is the list which represents the South. All right, we are going to step away so we can go to the top of the second hour, and you will stick around, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show.
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
Boing.
We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me.
Fine, how's it going?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle.
Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude!
Succulent fish! What?
He ate 54 wieners.
Oh, listen, Lavernius, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
All right, welcome to the second hour. It is the BBQ Central Show, and we talk about all the important stuff. Still to come on the show this evening, Michael Berard from the Rocket Fire Torch, and Michael Grunwald after him, senior writer over at Canary Media. We say good evening to those of you watching through Facebook or Twitch /BBQ Central Show, or over on YouTube, youtube.com/@BBQ Central Show. The YouTube poll question of the week is this: do you believe any pellet grill could last 100 years? Yes or no? And currently 77% of you are saying no. That's at least 20% light. 23% of you believe a pellet grill can last 100 years? I mean, give me a break. Coming up on the best moments of the BBQ Central Show in 10 minutes or less this Friday, taking you to episode 299, if you can believe it. One short of 300, which is a lot. September 29th, 2015, the owner of Southside Market and Barbecue, Brian Bracewell, was my guest back then. Some of you might know that South Side is the oldest barbecue joint in Texas, Elgin, Texas, to be exact. And Brian talks about the beginnings of South Side, the past owners, and then how his family bought into it 47 years later. This was back in 2015, so advance that by 8 years. So 55 years ago. And how they've grown the business into what it is today, which is continuing to be barbecue juggernaut. Of course, everybody loves the sausage out there at Southside. And we also talked about his then trip to Japan and how barbecue was being leveraged at that time to increase the export of American beef to Japan. At that time, barbecue was a big driver in that part of the business. Brian was brought over to showcase American-style barbecue along with American beef being the product to make that barbecue. Very interesting conversation, especially since some of the best cuts of meat that you can get anywhere in the globe are coming from Japan, both then and now. So don't forget, you have to subscribe to the show podcast feed in order to get the best of, and you can do that by going to thebbqcentralshow.com/subscribe. Don't forget, if you want to hear a guest or segment again that has been lost in the archives, email John, Jon, at thebbqcentralshow.com. Let him know you would like to hear. Don't forget, coming up in 11 days from now in Hartville, Ohio, we have the Grill Fest 2023. A full day of fun and frivolity and business and nonsense and hoodwinkedness. No hoodwinkedness. But there will be a whole bunch of really great live demos that are going to be going on. There's going to be a really great MC the whole day. On the Big Green Egg side of things, Captain Ron is going to be demoing live. On the Weber side of things, of course, our guest last week, Mike Lang from Another Pint Please. And on the Traeger side, who's been there for years and years, a crowd favorite, the inimitable Diva Q, Danielle Bennett. And as I had mentioned just a few minutes ago, I will be your MC throughout the course of the day. So I'll be interacting with the live demo talent, asking questions, this and that. And then we'll also be telling you about special deals. If you're looking for a deal on a Big Green Egg, a Weber, or a Traeger, there's a competition that's taking place, and the units, I think 7 of each, are being used. So after that's all said and done, they're going to be available for sale at a discount because they've already been used. So if you're looking for an egg or a Weber or whatever Traeger model that they're selling there and you want it at a discount, you don't mind that it's been used once and only once, I mean, that way you know it works, then you're going to want to take part in the Hartville Hardware Grill Fest. Fun day of competition, learning, but most of all, huge deals on everything that's in the barbecue and grilling section. And there will be representatives from many of the brands there to help answer your questions. Make sure you're buying what's best for you. As I had mentioned or asked Robert Moss last segment, was he familiar or would he pay $60 for an online streaming platform to get access to the most prominent barbecue and grilling personalities? Well, if you're someone who loves consuming videos by such stars as Brad Robinson, Chud, Mad Scientist Barbecue, Jeremy Yoder, Matt Groark, and a bunch of others, then you might want to check out Embers TV. Just launched a couple days ago, and I'm chasing Brad Robinson to discuss this. Now, actually, Matt Groark is going to be a guest on this show sooner than later. He's actually signed up through the calendar. So between one or both of them, and I haven't heard back from Brad, which is not usually the case, but maybe he's busy producing new content for this platform. But we'll talk to one or the other about it and see what the hubbub's about. So there you go. Now we're caught up. Michael Berard from Fire Rocket Torch will be coming here shortly. We talked to you quickly about Franklin's Barbecue Pits, newest sponsor of the show, for the barbecue purist who wants to take their craft to the next level. Skillfully made by hand right here in the States with all-American steel. Built to last, built with purpose. What you have with the Franklin Pit is a deeply thought out and refined version of the old propane-style cooker at Aaron's Restaurant, stylistically, it reflects the bare-bones industrial handmade aesthetic that he loves, as in the patina and the way the build allows you to see the welds and the craftsmanship. Now, the schematics of a Texas off-style barbecue pit are relatively simple, even if the things that are happening inside are complicated. Dynamics of physics, chemistry, all that smart stuff. There are a few moving parts here, but there are numerous and massive differences between the Franklin pit and the average everyday barbecue smoker you can get at a big box store. For one thing, the challenge of building and shipping these pits come with the thickness and the heaviness of the material, but that's where the value lies as well. Cheap smokers are made from thin metal, which tend to warp and crack when they're under the large, sustained heat builds. But you need that to make great barbecue, especially on cold days. That thin metal quickly sheds the heat. Simply struggle to maintain constant temperatures. That's frustrating. The Franklin barbecue pit, made with 5/16 and quarter-inch thick steel, made here in America. In a word, that's strong. Anything that sees heat has been engineered to be incredibly solid and should last a century or more if cared for properly. And you can't overstate how important the thickness of the steel is. Guarantees professional-grade heat retention, key to producing good barbecue. Every Franklin barbecue pit, unique unto itself. The patina, natural markings, even its very own badge number. Franklin pits can be found at fine barbecue specialty stores in select regions of the country. So, if you're a fan of this show and you happen to have such a store and you wish to become a dealer, please visit franklinbbqpits.com. Fill out their dealer form. If you're a fan of the show, you want to own a pit, you don't have a certified dealer nearby, you can go to franklinbbqpit.com and purchase a pit right there on the website. Franklin's will ship that pit right to your driveway. If you have any other questions along the way, make sure you use the Contact Us link at the bottom of the website. Remember, our pal Wes Wright has one from cookoutnews.com, and he loves it. franklinbbqpits.com. That's franklinbbqpits.com, and we're back with Michael Berard right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the BBQ Central Show.
And welcome back. This portion of the show tonight being brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, one of the most unique cooking devices out there on the market today. The deal is still going on. If you're looking to get a huge deal, like more than half off the PBX, the biggest one that they sell, write in an email to Pit Barrel Cooker and tell them you want the PBX deal. I believe the code was PBX USA a number of weeks ago, but I know the deal's still going on. I know they still have them. So write in or tweet at them or direct message them and tell them you heard about the deal here on the BBQ Central Show, and they will get you hooked up, no doubt about it. And it's shipped to your door for like $2.99, so super cheap. Gang, you hear it here all the time. I would use charcoal more if it wasn't so dirty, and more than that, if it wasn't so hard to light. My guest in the second hour has heard your cries and is offering a solution among some of the other options that already exist in the market. He can't help with the dirty part of the charcoal, but he can help with the lighting part of it. We welcome the creator of the Rocket Fire Torch and first-timer on this show, Michael Berard. Join me. Hey, Michael. How are you tonight?
Hey, Greg. How you doing?
I'm absolutely fabulous. Before we get into talking about the Rocket Fire and the Genesis and all that stuff, we have a YouTube poll question of the week. We're asking everybody this question. Do you believe that any pellet cooker could last 100 years, yes or no?
I'm going to give you a quicker answer than Meathead. No.
It was almost as fast as Robert Moss, who was right on the no, but we're sitting at right about 77% in agreement that no, pellet cookers are not going to be lasting 100 years. I just don't see how that could happen, but you never know.
Modern electronics.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that is immediately putting me to no with all of the moving parts and all the electronics. It's almost like buying a phone in a year or two. I mean, look, the The Green Mountain Grill that I have out in my backyard is probably going on 8 or 9 years old. Still works really well. And the Traeger Timberline 850, which was like version 1 when that first came out a handful of years ago, still works. I certainly don't see myself having that 20 years from now, let alone 90 years from now, because technology will have changed, and it'll just get to a point where you want to update, so you'll just get rid of that one to buy the new one, where on an offset pit, I can see that lasting 100 years because, I mean, it's really just a bunch of steel.
Yeah, no doubt. But I don't even think they use lead and solder anymore, so those circuit boards are not going to hold up.
What's your background professional?
My background professionally is a financial advisor. So I've been doing that for 31 years.
How old a guy are you?
55. Double nickel.
You do something like out of college or something like that first before you got into financial planning then? I mean, 31 years is a long time.
Yeah. No, I started right out of college, and yeah, it's a pretty good gig. It's a entrepreneurial gig, and kind of run my own show, and good people, great relationships.
What should we be investing in right now?
It's a good question. I don't want to turn anybody off, but I do think we're going to have a little bit of a downturn at some point.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where does the genesis of Rocket Fire Torch come from?
So back in, I'll take you kind of through it quickly.
Yeah,
back in 2016, my good bud and I were cooking on a green egg and talking about the fact that it took so long to get it started. We had tried everything. We had tried electric starters and chimney and you name it. And I just thought, I felt like there had to be something better out there, a better way to light it, maybe something more fun. So, after that, I went home and drew up some plans and took it to an engineering firm, and that was 2016. So I'll take you. So 2019, we launched our first Kickstarter campaign, and it bombed. Do you have any music or anything that you can play for that? Bombed? Yeah, it bombed. It was pretty bad. So
why did it bomb? What specifically made it tank?
Yeah, so we were going to have our own fuel. The torch itself was hooked onto a hose.
Yeah,
that was that would go to the fuel, and we heard a lot of feedback, and so I stopped the Kickstarter right in the middle. I said, you know what, we got to go back and retool, and that's what we did. So 2021, we did another Kickstarter, raised over $200K. 2022, we delivered to our backers. And then 2023, we started ads in April, and we sold Slam out by July.
Wow.
It was quick. Yeah, totally underestimated demand. And yeah, it's been good.
What fuel were you going to be selling with the first version of this? Did you come up with some unique way of firing a torch that nobody knew about that you could capture?
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a fuel that was made out of Europe that was it's safer. It's a foam form within the canister. And so you could turn it upside down, you could do whatever you want with it, and it was just much safer fuel. But, people want to be able to get their fuel from Home Depot and Lowe's and Ace and, you name it. They don't want to, or Walmart. They just want to be able to get the fuel.
So was that the biggest nix, was the fact that you were going to be exclusive to fuel? You run out of it in the middle of a torch session, and then you got to order it?
No, I think the bigger part of it was like, okay, I'm a brand new company, and what if I don't make it? So then where do I get my fuel?
No, I got a torch. I got to go to Amazon Europe to buy my fuel.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a bad idea. And we retooled. So
would that have been expensive too? I mean, you would have to be importing fuel all the time.
Well, we had a manufacturer that would make it up north, so we could
Oh.
have made it. Yep, made it, and it look at some point, it may be something that we look into, but not at the moment.
How long does it take to go? Well, I guess it takes about 3 years to go from concept to getting it into a sellable product, more or less. Then?
Yeah, it's it takes a while to get a product on the market.
Did it look like
Yeah,
this
that's it.
in the beginning,
That
except
looks
it had a hose coming down here?
No,
or?
it looked
No.
it looked like a lightsaber from Star Wars. I mean, it really did,
Neat.
and I liked it, but not everybody liked it. So, and it wasn't ergonomic. It wasn't really set perfectly for what we wanted. So, the new and improved model that we're using now is really set up for. I mean, it was designed, and I know this is completely overused, but it was purpose built for a Kamado style grill.
Oh.
It just was. I mean, it's from the length of the wand, the bend in the wand. It goes right in a Primo or a Kamado Joe or a Big Green Egg,
Primo.
straight down into the coals.
Yep.
So it's a perfect setup. Yeah.
We'll talk about firing it up and actual use and all that stuff here in a second. Aside from like that initial fuel situation, maybe changing the shape, any other big issues getting this thing to market?
Oh man, getting anything to market, I think, is tough. From concept to actually getting on the. I mean, I don't know how many people fail at it, but it's got to be really easy. And you also have to get by the wife. You got to be able to work it by the wife.
Yeah.
The money is going out, and she's wondering, are we going to ever get our money back from this? So there are tons of challenges. I mean, you have safety challenges, you have resource challenges. Obviously, we've had some inflation. So the product price is different than what it would have been 5 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah. But otherwise, it's been a long road, but we think that we've got some good legs here.
How much does the 200K in Kickstarter subsidize whatever what was your overall sink into getting this thing up and running?
Oh man, we're way underwater. I mean, I think any new business is going to be like that. But the 200K was good. The 200K took care of, we had over 2,000 backers, which was great. And so we shipped 2,200 and change units, and that paid for those. Kickstarter campaign is not cheap, but it gives you the money up front, so you don't have to go borrow it from friends and family.
Yeah.
So it got us going, and it also gave us kind of a platform to get more feedback from people. And we've had overwhelmingly positive responses. It's been really, really enjoyable.
Is this 100% direct to consumer at the moment, or are you also running through dealers?
No, it's 100% e-commerce at this point, but we have had a ton of interest in people wanting to sell it at their stores. We've got some big box interest. We wanted to wait until we worked out all the kinks before we went to a larger platform, and so we're there. We're at that place, and so now it's. We're going to continue with e-commerce, but I think we'll start sending them out to stores pretty quickly here.
Is the ultimate goal to get into Home Depot or something along these lines, just from a mass appeal standpoint, or will you take smaller hardware chains or whoever has interest that wants to carry? Because then the way you're moving units.
Yeah, there are several ways to go about this, but I think that. For us, ultimately, we want to be in big box market. That's where you get your exposure. We get out to more people. What we found is that when people buy this, they end up coming back and buying 2 or 3 more for their friends, family, for some kind of Father's Day or Christmas or whatever. So we've been really successful once people try it. And I guess the other thing is they're using it, at a barbecue, and people are seeing it. So I'll give you a quick example. And this is not grilling, but the Solo stove. I remember, we have a Y Guides here, which is like Boys Club, I guess. And back in 2016, one guy had a Solo stove at one of these big events. And 2017, everybody had a Solo stove. I mean, you see it, you check it out, you're like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then you buy it. So there's a tipping point somewhere here, and we think we'll make it at some point in the next 2-3 years.
For those listening, not watching, maybe after they're listening, they'll go back and watch this video feed. You paint us a picture on how this looks and how it operates. I'll go ahead and obviously hold it up here while you're talking us through.
Yeah, sure. It has this thing is built like a brick house. So it is very heavy. The handle, it is. It's pretty heavy. It's like 3 pounds. It has a handle that you can screw on the canister or cylinder of propane. It has a trigger, has a continuous fuel flow button. It has adjustable flame control, and yep, exactly. And then, there are a lot of internals here that I want to go into, but some things that we had to do over those 5 years to make it right. That just won't work without it. So at the end of the torch, you can use the torch with or without a tip. So it's kind of a unique modular design. So without the tip, you got a 10-inch flame. You can use it for whatever. I mean, people are using it to sear meat. They're using it for other, to get rid of weeds or whatever else. That's not what we have it for, but they're using it. And they're also using that a lot of times to start a pizza oven. So that is one way to do it. You can't really push that into the coals, but the tip,
I see a t-shirt coming with that, right?
It's a stainless steel tip. The thing is flawless. You screw it on. It has a 60-degree flame, triple flame that comes out of it, and it can be directed. It can be injected into the wood or charcoal pile, so it allows it to start the pile underneath as opposed to over top. So it's kind of more of a precision tool. But the key is that we're going to be coming out with new tips in the future. We already have some suggestions, and people that want that have pizza ovens, and they want a flame that's a different type of flame. So we're going to be looking at that in the future.
Fuel to operate is just propane cans that you can get at any hardware store?
MAP gas or propane, both are great. I like MAP gas. It's hotter, it's quicker, but propane is fantastic, and it's cheap, and you can buy it anywhere. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we could light a fire fast. I mean, ultimately, for us, it's spend more time with the family, get the grill going, and then spend more time with the family.
I have a weed burner that I got from Harbor Freight. So I have a hose that connects to a 20-pound propane tank, and this thing, I think it's like 758 billion BTUs or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
But when I put it into the cooker, it'll go out. So if I have this thing, you're talking about burying it in the coals, and then I start it, this thing isn't going to go out? Doesn't it need oxygen?
Yeah, it sucks oxygen, but probably not as much as your Harbor Freight. So yeah, we recommend anybody that's using it in like a deep, like a big green egg or even a Solo stove, something like that. You got to have the vents open. You got to have as much airflow as you possibly can. So you'll get used to it, and you'll kind of get a feel for where you need to stick this thing in for it to work the right way.
Is there an adapter for hooking up to a bigger tank, or is that not in the works?
Here's the thing with that. There are adapters on the market. We haven't tested it, So this thing is UL tested. So it's United Labs tested. We went kind of above and beyond to get it safety tested. I've got 2 kids, 10 and 12-year-old. We wanted to make sure it was right, and the quality and the safety was paramount for us. So saying that, there are people that are using it like that, but we don't necessarily recommend it. It just hasn't been tested with that kind of pressure.
Why do I want to spend $145 on this compared to a chimney starter and some plastic cubes?
Well, that's a good question. And let me tell you, chimney starter is tried and true, right? I mean, you're not going to go wrong with a chimney starter, and you're not going to go wrong with the cubes either. But the Rocket Fire is built specifically to light a grill, a charcoal grill, or a fire pit. It is not. It's not something that was built for something else. It is built directly for that purpose, and so we have it set up. It's fast. It's faster than some of these other starters out there. It's faster than a chimney, ultimately. But the chimneys. A lot of people use a chimney. Chimney starter folks may or may not be our clients. This thing is fun. The Rocket Fire is fun. It makes you basically the envy of the neighborhood. You start this thing up, you hear rocket flames, rocket fire. People are like, "What's that?" So it works. It works pretty well. Look, we got great customer service. Any issues whatsoever, we take care of people. We're a startup company, and we're going to make sure that we stand behind the product.
Inventory is good. You can sell them as quickly as we can order.
Inventory's out. We're completely sold out. We've got new inventory coming in. Sorry. We totally underestimated demand.
Wow.
And so we sold out on Amazon. We sold out on our website. We had to slow things down. We had to stop advertising because we wanted it, to at least have some in July. So we've got a small shipment coming in October, and then we got a large shipment coming in November. And we actually have designed a storage case. So we've got a storage case coming. It's a thermal line storage case. It can handle the tip heat, which gets really hot. And so the storage case is, it's vegan leather, and it's thermal lined, and it can be locked. So you can put a padlock on it and keep it away from the kids.
If you're interested, rocketfiretorch.com is the website. Is there a waiting list or an alert once they're back in stock, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's you can get on the waiting list. You can pre-order if you want. The pre-orders will get some of this small shipment that's coming in October. But look, we're going to take care of you. These are all new units. They're all improved units coming in October and November.
Do you want me to send this one back to you so you can sell it?
Nah, I want you to use it.
Yes, that's a great answer. Thank goodness. I send it back, but might be better in my hands. Rocketfiretorch.com is the website. We're talking with Michael Berard. Michael, appreciate the time tonight and continued success.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Take
You
care.
got it. They are hot, no pun intended, so you can use it with or without the tip. Tip has the jets, and without the tip, I think he said a 10-inch flame. Wow. RocketFireTorch.com. Michael Grunwald is in the green room, getting ready to talk about cell-cultivated meat and more. Listen up, gang. Our friends at Big Papa Smokers have something special just for you, listeners of the show. Whether you're a seasoned pitmaster or grilling newbie, Big Papa Smokers, your one-stop shop for all things barbecue. From their championship rubs, mouth-watering sauces, essential accessories, they've got what you need to take your food to the next level. Whether you're on the competition circuit or in your own backyard, here's the cherry on top. Big Papa Smokers offering the listeners of the Barbecue Central Show an exclusive deal. Using the promo code, my last name, REMPE, REMPE at checkout. You get $10 off a $50 purchase of rubs, sauces, or accessories. That's 20%. Imagine the possibilities. Evaluating your ribs with Big Papa Smoker's Sweet Money Rub, one of my favorites. Or add Big Papa's Desert Gold to your chicken or asparagus, or better yet, pick up Big Papa's Double Secret Steak and add that to your steak. Head on over to BigPapaSmokers.com and start your shopping today. And don't forget to use promo code REMPE, R-E-M-P-E, at checkout to claim your $10 off your next order of $50 or more. Also, don't forget to check out Big Papa's full line of recipes at cookingwithbigpapa.com. And, of course, follow them on all the social media platforms. We're back with Mike Grunwald right after this. Stick around. I'll be right back.
You're listening to the BBQ Central Show. Whole packers, full racks, legs and thighs, injecting butts. If you've never heard this before, you might think you found the best XXX show ever. Let's get back to the most homoerotic host out there today, Craig Rempe.
And we thank Mike Berard for joining us last segment. Rocket Fire Torch, rocketfiretorch.com, the website. It's been a topic on the show the past few months because it's something that's new. It's something that looks to buck the traditional ways of getting beef and meat to the market. But it's not a plant-based option. It's cellularly cultivated meat. A few weeks ago, we talked about it with a beef producer in Minnesota, Tom Remley, and tonight we pick it up with someone who has been diligently following this trend for a while now. He's an award-winning journalist, best-selling author who's currently writing a column for food and climate for Canary Media, and he's also writing the book Feed the World Without Frying the World. He's also won a George Polk Award for national reporting, a Worth Bingham Prize for investigative reporting. He's graduated from Harvard, for crying out loud. What's he doing on this show? We welcome, first time to the show, Mike Grunwald. Hey, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me, Greg.
Appreciate you joining the show. Before we get into the topic tonight, we have a YouTube poll question of the week that we're asking everybody. Do you believe that any pellet grill would last 100 years, yes or no?
You asking me?
Yeah, of course.
Sure. Sure, why not?
All right. Well, you are certainly in the minority thought there, with 24% of the voting public saying yes, they believe a pellet cooker could last 100 years. Me personally, no way. There's a lot of electronics in there, which I think makes 100 years of life pretty unattainable, but we'll see how the rest of the show goes here in the voting. A quick background on you and how you got to where you are today, Mike.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a dork journalist, write a lot about policy. I was at the Washington Post and Time Magazine, and then I was at Politico Magazine for a while. And I've written a lot about climate change, but always about energy. So followed fossil fuels, but also, the sort of revolution in wind and solar and electric vehicles. And honestly, I was writing a magazine story about how about my own life in the new green economy, because I got solar panels and an electric car, and I was writing about the sort of pros and cons of it. And I had some throwaway line about basically how I wasn't doing it because I was some kind of eco saint, that I was more a kind of eco mercenary, taking advantage of how cheap solar had gotten, and that I didn't like paying for gas. And so I had this line about, kind of a throwaway line about how, I'm not like line drying my laundry. I'm still eating meat. And then I realized, like, I don't even know if meat is actually bad for the climate. And then I realized, well, if I don't know that, then probably a lot of people don't. And that's what sort of really led me onto this journey into the food system, which is a third of, it's not as bad a problem as fossil fuels and our energy problem, but it's like a third of the climate problem. And it turns out that yes, meat, and particularly beef, is a huge part of our carbon and methane and nitrous oxide emissions that are heating up the planet. So yeah. And so I think your interest in cultivated meat is right on point, because it's certainly, you're starting to hear about it. There are a couple of U.S. restaurants now serving it for the first time. it's obviously has not gone mainstream, and, spoiler alert, it won't go mainstream anytime soon. But I think when people talk about what are some of the long-term solutions, it's definitely on the table.
How much harder is it to be a journalist now compared to 20 years ago? In other words, you can be simply and quickly discounted by people saying, I don't believe that. Alternative truths seem to be everywhere. They have a firm place in society right now. Would it have been easier to do this 20, 30 years ago?
Oh, Jesus, you got a half an hour? I mean, yes, would be the short. Yeah, no, I mean, I think everybody talks about how journalism sucks, and we certainly do have a problem on the supply side. But I think there's a real problem on the demand side too, which, people are looking for ammunition, not information. And for, nerds like me who have spent now, God, I'm so old, 30 years writing about what, slightly complex public policy to try to explain it to people. People don't want stuff explained to them anymore. They just want their kind of political erogenous zones massaged. And I'm not so good at that.
Before we get into the specific cell-cultivated stuff or alternate proteins, let's talk about an overarching issue you wrote in an article this past January, which was the general public's aversion to technology in their food.
Oh, yeah.
For an otherwise tech-crazy public, nationally and globally for that matter, why the aversion to food tech, as you call it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hear about a lot with GMOs, right? And now certainly with the plant-based meat, right? It's fake meat now. Cell meat. People are calling it lab-grown meat, even though it won't be grown in a lab. And I do think there's a feeling that food is somehow natural, and that anything having to do with technology is icky. But of course, we've been breeding plants since Gregor Mendel in the in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and a lot of these technologies are going to be really important, because the basic problem, as you mentioned, I'm writing a book about how to feed the world without frying the world, and we've got this basic problem where we're going to need 50% more calories by 2050. But we're going to have to do it with probably 75% less carbon emissions and no more land. So we're going to have to make a lot more food with a lot less land. And that is going to take technology. And of course, you got to be careful about it. You don't, there are always unintended consequences, and you want these things to be properly tested and vetted. But if you're just going to, stick your fingers in your ears and say, la, 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 I don't want technology. I mean, the modern cow is a technology too. It's not that natural. It's, it's been bred to be much more efficient than it used to be. That's true of chickens and pigs too. And in many ways, that's, the climate would be in a lot more trouble if we hadn't done that. So I just think I was definitely making the case, and I used cell meat as an example, that, we shouldn't just be turning up our noses and saying, I'm not going to put technology in our mouth, because we do it every day.
Before we talk extensively about the cell stuff, let's take a look at some of the other heralded change agents that are now more or less getting shit on. Most recently, it's been plant-based meats. It's very hot takey to write them off at this point, but what's your take on the two big options in the market, that being Impossible and Beyond, and where they really are in their life cycle?
Well, it's funny. This is back in 2019 when plant-based meat was going to take over the world and the hype was completely out of control. That was when I was really just starting to work on this stuff. And I was like, it seems like a little bit crazy. And now that, as you said, everybody is, we're beyond impossible. It's all like, everything's going to hell. I feel like a little bit of the gloom and doom has gotten out of control. I mean, the fact is, like, Beyond Meat, it was in 2019, it went public. It was still the biggest popping IPO of the 21st century. Yeah. It has not been surpassed. At one point, it had a market value that was 1/3 of Tyson's. And, it was like, it made no sense. It was absolutely absurd. And now they've lost 95% of their market value. And they're like an $800 million company, which, 10 years ago, you would have said that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Now, look, I mean, I think Impossible. Personally, I think Impossible has a really impressive technology. I think they've, in many ways, their burgers are really quite good. I love the CEO of Beyond, but I've told him I just don't like those burgers. I think they smell like piss on the grill, and I just, they still have those. They're made of peas rather than soy, and they have that pea off taste. So I'm not crazy about it. But they're obviously, these are not your, those hockey puck veggie burgers of the of 20 years ago, and this industry is only like 10, 12 years old. It's going to get a lot better, while the cow is a pretty mature technology. So I'm pretty bullish about it long term, in large part because of these climate issues where you have particularly beef burgers, beef steak. We're if we switched, the average American eats 3 burgers a week, the equivalent in meat. And if you switched 1 a week to an Impossible Burger, you would save a land area the size of Massachusetts every year. So, beef has an extraordinary, not just people talk about the burping and farting cows, and that has some impact, and the manure has a lot of environmental impact too, but it's mostly the land. And, right now, a third of the terrestrial earth, the arable land, has cows on it. And, and right now, the world is kind of split 50-50 between nature and farms. And the more farms you have, the less nature, and that's carbon going up into the atmosphere. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure, particularly things like, chicken nuggets that are really not that hard to do. Impossible already has good ones. Even Gardein has it's just a vehicle for sauce. I think those are going to get really popular fast. Things like steak, pork tenderloin, some of the awesome barbecue that you talk about in your show. I think that's going to be a lot harder getting that marbling, getting those complex flavors. And that's where cell meat comes in. I think there's at least more of a chance that you're going to get to some of those, they call them the whole cuts, as opposed to just the homogenized, nuggets, sausages, the kind of thing that are a lot easier to copy with plants.
When I was talking about plant-based meat here over the last couple of years, I would tell people, look, eat it if you want, but don't think that you are making yourself into a healthier human because you're eating plant-based meat. There's a lot of processing that goes on here, this would be, to me, a textbook definition of what processed food is. But is it not that big of a deal, really?
Well, look, I mean, I think part of the gloom and doom of this plant-based meat industry have been people suddenly saying like, nobody's going to ever eat this. It's processed food. I'm kind of like, I don't know. Americans seem to like processed food. Like, I wouldn't write it off because of that. Now, you're absolutely right. It's not health food. You're not eating kale, right? This is, these aren't lentils. But the evidence so far, and it's early, is that, it has no cholesterol. It has no saturated fats. It seems like it's pretty comparable to eating meat. Which particularly beef, red meat has some health issues of its own, but certainly you should not be fooling yourself that, that if you're eating 2 Impossible Burgers a day, you're like, some kind of organic vegetarian. I do think, there are some people who are going to say it's processed, so I don't like it. But, what goes on inside a cow, that's a process too. And what happens in some of these factory farms is a process that a lot of people are not crazy about. So I do think as people pay more attention to where their food is coming from, some people will be turned off by the processed nature, that it's being made with an extruder instead of an animal. But personally, that's not what bothers me. I think the problem right now is that for the most part, it doesn't taste as good, and it's not as cheap. Once they solve that, then suddenly I think you're going to see people getting over their aversion to, I would never eat that. It's processed.
So let's dig into the cell cultivated meat stuff. Can you give us a little history lesson on where this has started and, of course, where it currently sits in viability right now?
Sure. Well, I mean, we're just about exactly 10 years out from the first um, cultivated burger. At the time, they were calling it in vitro meat, right? Schmeat, I heard it was called. They didn't know what to call it. Cell-based meat, lab-grown meat, and it was unveiled by a company now called Mosa Meat, guy in Amsterdam, and and it was great. They said it tasted pretty good. It didn't have fat, but it was like little pieces of muscle that they sort of mushed together. It was pretty good. The one problem was that one 5-ounce burger cost $330,000 to make. So not really a viable business. Today, in just 10 years, it has come a very long way. You've got a couple hundred of these companies around the world making this stuff. You've got a couple of them building some really big factories to try to do it at scale. You've got 2 companies approved for sale in the United States. Just the company that makes eggs, they have a subsidiary called Good Meat. They're selling in a Jose Andres restaurant in Washington, and then Upside Foods is selling in a restaurant in San Francisco. I'm actually going to go see them next week, and it's, they've come a long way now. They're in the hundreds of dollars a pound. Some just seems to be even a little bit below that. They're talking about getting to, $10, $20 a pound in the relative future, but they're still not competitive. They're not ready for prime time. And, they're selling, Upside has a factory that's right now making 50,000 pounds of cultivated meat a year, which is right now the biggest factory in operation. The world eats 350 million tons of meat a year.
Wow.
So, a ways to go.
We know in the typical process, cows, chickens, pigs, etc., are getting marched into some type of facility, murdered in cold blood. Getting down with cell-cultivated meat, in theory, could put an end to all of that, but I don't know what the process of cell cultivation is, and is there any harm that becomes the animal that's donating?
No, basically. They take a biopsy to get sort of original stem cells from the animal. Pretty harmless, but most of these companies, they have their original chicken or their original pig that they took their original biopsy from, and they brag about how that pig is now living a lovely life on the farm upstate. I don't know. But now some of these companies, so that they then develop these cell lines, which are, essentially, because remember, I mean, part of the problem with growing an animal, right, growing a cow, is that it's very inefficient, right? You just want to grow a chicken breast, or you just want to, grow a steak, but you've got to grow, tail and hooves and a respiratory system and a reproductive system and all kinds of stuff that aren't meat. For a chicken, you're growing feathers and beaks and brains and, and clucking, and, they do all kinds of things that don't make meat. This idea is we're just going to grow the meat. Yep. So it ought to be more efficient, and you put it in a fermenter and you basically feed it starch, right? And you feed it sugars and amino acids. One problem is that for some of these companies have been feeding them in their sort of growth factors. They've been feeding them the fetal bovine serum, which is actually does come from an animal, and that was kind of uncool for a lot of the vegans in this world, but they're mostly moving past that. But the basic problem is that it's a very expensive process right now. That growth media, the stuff they feed the cells, is very expensive. They're trying to work out how to do these fermenters, these bioreactors, because you've got to. This is something that pharmaceutical industry has been doing for years. Like they make, the rennet, for cheese, the insulin for treating diabetes. This is all stuff that you do in this kind of bioreactor, but has to be very sterile. And it's okay because insulin is really expensive, right? Or growing a human heart cell. Like, people will pay a lot of money for this.
Yeah.
To try to do it food grade is going to be a real challenge. And the costs are coming way, way down, but they're nowhere near what they need to be. And I think that's really the challenge. Some people say, oh, it's not, it might not be as environmentally friendly as people say. It might end up using a lot of energy. I really think those are not going to be big problems. The problem is, can you get it to scale? And that means, can you get it cheap?
Yeah, so that was part of my talking point last week in my monologue about this was, to me, there's 2 points to clear. The second point, which is the one we've been referencing on and off during the conversation, is cost and what's that going to look like. But the first hurdle to me was taste and aesthetic. Are we clearing that hurdle?
So it's funny. I have had some of the cultivated meat. I've been lucky enough to try some. I tried it at Good Meat. I've tried their chicken, and it tastes like chicken because it's chicken, right? It's made from a chicken cells. Now it's not exactly the same. I had like a nugget that was, that they nailed it, but nuggets. I've had plant-based nuggets that nail it too. I had some. I guess, you would call it chicken breast, although of course it's not coming from like breast cells. They're just, it's, I asked the chef, I was like, is this a breast or a thigh? And he was like, yeah.
It is chicken.
But, exactly. It's chicken. I found they did a chicken breast type thing, sort of grilled, that was really good, but soft. It was like didn't have quite that chew and bite that you'd expect. And then I tried, they made a fried version, and there the actual meat tasted really good. And then they said to me, they were like, we made you some skin too, but it's not ready yet. And it was like a joke. The skin, it was like kind of like a chickeny potato chip kind of, it just, it was not there. But I've had cultivated sushi. That was really good. I had a meatball made by a company called Mission Barns that was sort of 90% plant-based, and then with 10% animal fat, cultivated fat, because fat cells are actually easier to grow. Because when you think about it, like our muscles do more, right? While fat just kind of sits there, so it's easier to grow. And fat is part of what really makes meat so tasty.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they think, since their expensive part is only 10% of their meatball, and that tasted like a meatball. I was pretty impressed. Even though it was only, that fat clearly makes a big difference. So I think you're going to start seeing some of those blended products, maybe a little bit before you start to see just pure meat. But, people are trying to do this with breeding. They're trying to do the CRISPR, gene editing, to try to make it, basically make it grow faster. There are going to be a lot of different ways to, take bites at this apple. And all of them are basically sort of, how can we make it cheaper? Because I think the taste is not as big a hurdle as it is for plant-based, because you're dealing with the real thing.
When you're tasting those cell-cultivated meats, maybe this is impossible to do, but can you extract yourself out of your tasting and say, am I saying it tastes good because they're showcasing it for me and it's a great environment? Like going to a fancy restaurant, maybe the food wasn't really that good, but everything else about it was romance and sexy and all this stuff, so it enhances the flavor. Is there some of that for you?
It's possible. I mean, I think I do have a little bit of credibility on this, because I really have, I always tell the CEO, I usually am eating it right in front of them, and I tell them in advance, I'm like, I just have to warn you, I'm really sorry. I'm going to give you an honest reaction, because I might end up writing about this, and I don't want to tell you it was good and then write it was crap. And I have told some of them, yeah, I don't like this at all.
Mm.
And, I try to be vaguely polite about it, although I guess a little bit less with Ethan Brown of Beyond, who I did tell him that it smelled like piss on the grill. And I told him I was like, well, in fairness though, you did kind of nail that kind of not so fresh feeling that I get from eating beef. And he was like, yeah, that doesn't make me feel a lot better.
Yeah, right. Wow.
But so, yeah, I mean, it's hard to know, but I think, there's something about meat, right? I mean, you know this a million times better than me. But there's something that goes ding in your brain, right?
Yeah.
There's it sets off some kind of pheromone. That I think one thing that was exciting about some of these early plant-based meats, where it was like, God, this at least, and it kind of has that mouthfeel, at least kind of it's reminiscent of meat, as opposed to these like ridiculous veggie burgers of the past, where it was just like, oh, come on, this is ridiculous. And I've tasted, like I had some plant-based bacon where I actually told the guy, I was like, you cannot be serious. I mean, but I think this stuff has all cleared a certain hurdle, where it's like, okay, we're in the ballpark. And I feel like with a lot of the cultivated meat, more so far than the plant meat, you get a little bit of that ding where it's like, okay, that's meat. And, I'm sure they're like, they have their good chef putting it with, I try to eat it without sauce, so that I have an honest reaction. But, I do think that that is not going to be the biggest hurdle. There might be a little bit of people with the ick factor about technology, and cost and scale is going to be really hard because, as I said, they've got to increase about 1,000x before they're even noticeable. Really more like 100,000x. But yeah, I think taste, because they're dealing with actual cells that grow into actual meat, that I think is exciting. And a lot of these guys believe that plant-based will never quite get over that hurdle, particularly for a steak. That they're just, people are going to want the meat. And so that's why, Uma Valetti, who runs Upside Meat, who was a cardiologist. He was invested in Beyond and Impossible, but he still decided he had to do this because, you're not going to just, plant-based burgers are not going to solve this problem of, 350 million tons of meat going towards 500 and by 2050. Just there ain't enough land on the planet for all them cows. So this is one way of getting around it. And I think there's also this idea that, sort of vegans yelling at people and saying like, meat is murder, you suck. Like, that's not going to fix it either. Like we've seen with energy, we've seen solar was absolutely nothing until it got cheap. And then it's like, oh, okay. Electric vehicles, nobody even looked at them until they were cool, until they were good and, getting cheaper. And I think to get any sort of scale, that's going to happen. But the good news is once it, maybe not so good news for the people who people working in animal agriculture, but you can see with some of this renewable energy that once it hits a certain tipping point, it can grow fast.
Last question before I let you go, and appreciate the time. And I'm asking you to look in the crystal ball of the future here. When would you see this becoming price competitive? I'm not talking about chicken being $20 a pound. That's not price competitive. Where do you see it coming in at $5 a pound or $3 a pound, something like that?
The cell-based or all of it?
Yeah, the cell-based stuff. Like the plant-based stuff, I'm not worried about. That's, as you said, that's always going to be a tougher hurdle to cross for my audience at least. But the cell-based stuff, you can't argue with the fact that it's not, a meat of some type because it's coming from the animal.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's not fake meat. It's meat.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think plant-based meat will get better too, particularly the easier cuts. But I would say, if you were going to put a gun to my head, I would say not before 2035 will cultivated meat be in the ballpark of cost competitive. But people in the industry say they can do it faster. And I do think because of what you're seeing with CRISPR, with some of these, I try not to bet against technology. Like I've got this thing here in my pocket that, like if 10 years ago you had told me like, oh yeah, you're going to carry it around. It's got all the world's knowledge. It can take pictures and videos and it's got a flashlight, I would have been like, no. Shit moves fast sometimes. Right. Yeah. And so I try not to just say like, there are a lot of people there and some scientists who say it just is not feasible to get this, in any kind of cost competitive way. But I don't think that's true. And then just, I should mention that there is always the possibility as climate becomes a bigger problem and you're starting to see governments take more action about it, just as you've seen on the coal side where coal is now more expensive. It's not just solar getting cheaper, but because of government regulations are making the dirty stuff more expensive. You could start to see that happen with with beef as well. I mean, a friend of mine is a pollster and he once told me that that restrictions on meat are like by the least popular government action that he has ever polled. Wow. So I'm not expecting it any minute, but if there is some sort of price on carbon and emissions, meat is a part of that, and meat could end up paying the price, which would make it a slightly lower bar for cultivated meat to clear.
Mike Grunwald has said it all here this evening, given us quite the education about the plant-based alternatives, and then obviously diving into the cell-based stuff as well. You can read the article that I had referenced over at canarymedia.com. If you're interested, I would certainly recommend that. And getting over your fear of tech in your food and where the positives are, a great article, certainly worth the read. Mike, really appreciate the time tonight, and hopefully as this progresses, we can have you back on as the expert and we can learn a little about next time you're on.
I'd love to. When I finally finish this frickin' book, you'll have to, come back and talk to you about it.
All right. Appreciate the time. Right. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Greg.
Mike Grunwald right there. And it's Canary Media, CANARY media.com is the website. And the article is, what was it called? It was like afraid of tech in your food, get over it. Afraid of high-tech food, get over it is the name of the article if you're looking for it. Definitely worth the read. You know me and reading, right? So I read the whole thing from start to finish, and it was very enlightening. So we thank Mike Grunwald for joining us. I kept him extra because the information was good. I don't know when I'm going to get my hands on an expert like that to go in depth like that. So hopefully we're able to stick with it and you're able to get a different opinion and different insight on that part of the industry. All the way back in the first hour was Meathead from AmazingRibs.com talking about his explosive barbecue rub. Robert Moss joined us after Meathead. We talked about the new Southern Living's Top 50 barbecue list that it is released now. If you want the direct link, go to robertfmoss.com and link over from there. Second hour, 2 first-time guests. Mike Berard from rocketfiretorch.com, and closing out the show just now, Mike Grunwald over at Canary Media. Writing a book called Feed the World Without Frying the World. Big show planned for you next week, third Tuesday of the month, so look forward to that. And then the Tuesday after that, on the 26th, in studio for the first time ever, Jason Baker, Green Mountain Grill, which is also going to so it'll be much like Aaron Huntelman from last month. Jason will be right here. We'll have the 9:14 segment with Jason, and all Jason will have a Derek Riches sighting. Second hour, Jason's going to sit in for the embedded correspondent segment. It's going to be great. We have a F load of assurity questions, and it keeps getting bigger. So how do I always leave you? We know yesterday was September 11th, and I reiterate, September 11th, 2001, I will never forget. 22 years ago yesterday. Until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, this is your program host, the proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.
to BBQ Central.